Hello and welcome to the Lines That Never Were series, where we talk about proposed but forgotten New York City subway projects. In this video, we will talk about the IRT Third Avenue L replacement project, including its history, remnants, and whether the Third Avenue L replacement project is needed today. Before we talk about the IRT Third Avenue L replacement project, we want to talk a bit about the IRT Third Avenue L. The Third Avenue L opened in 1878 from South Ferry to 129th Street, and in 1886 was extended into the Bronx as the Suburban Line. The Suburban Line section is to be noted, as that would be the section in question for the IRT Third Avenue L replacement project. The Third Avenue L would extend deeper into the Bronx in 1887, 1888, 1891, 1901, 1902, and finally in 1920, when it finally extended to Gun Hill Road and connected to the IRT White Plains Road line. The Third Avenue L would receive its third track in 1916, so that the line could run peak direction express service. And this project is so important that it was called more important than the Panama Canal. However, by the 1920s and 1930s, the city drew up plans to replace the elevated lines. The Second Avenue subway was proposed to replace the Third Avenue L in a nearby IRT Second Avenue L, but we all know what happened to these plans. Anyway, when 1940 rolled around, the private companies were bought out by the city, and the city was tasked with the job of uniting the I&D, IRT, and BMT networks. One of the first acts of unification was demolishing redundant elevated lines like the nearby IRT Second Avenue L. The IRT Third Avenue L, at least in Manhattan, would be spared until 1955, when the L in Manhattan was torn down in anticipation of the Second Avenue subway. Almost immediately, Third Avenue saw new developments being built. The northern section in the Bronx would continue to operate. Early plans of the Second Avenue subway had the subway connect to this section of the L at around 163rd Street and have trains run to Gun Hill Road. However, by the 1960s, the L had deteriorated to the point where it would be extremely expensive to rehabilitate it for subway use. After all, the L was approaching its 90th birthday, and years of deferred maintenance really took its toll. Community opposition towards the L was another factor, as people wanted the same level of rejuvenation seen on Manhattan's Third Avenue once the L was torn down. The 1968 Program for Action Plan was the perfect time to replace the L, as planners proposed the IRT Third Avenue L replacement project. The L would be raised, and service along Third Avenue would be replaced with a new subway using Metro North's right-of-way near Park Avenue. Since the railroads were losing passengers, it was envisioned that 2 of the 4 tracks on the right-of-way would be converted into subway use. The subway would start at Wakefield in the north and would make its way south to 149th Street and would connect to either the IRT Lexington Avenue line or the Second Avenue subway. We think that the IRT Lexington Avenue line would be more plausible for planners because the Second Avenue subway already had 2 branches under the Program for Action, and having a third branch was not feasible, especially since the Second Avenue subway was envisioned to be 2 tracks at that time. Furthermore, by extending the Second Avenue subway to cover Eastern Bronx, the 5 won't be needed on White Plains Road. meaning that the 5 would be free to cover service on the new subway. Finally, this new line needed yard access, and it was speculated that the old connection to the IRT White Plains Road line would be preserved so that the new subway could use the 239th Street yard. These could only handle the narrow rolling stock of the IRT, meaning that wider IND/BMT cars could not be used without more reconstruction. This project was envisioned to be a Phase 2 project of the Program for Action, meaning that it was a low priority of the Program for Action. This replacement project's success was determined by whether the city could finish building its Phase 1 projects, as Phase 1 projects under the Program for Action were a building block for Phase 2 projects. Even with this in mind, the IRT Third Avenue L ended service in 1973. Planners thought that progress on Phase 1 projects were going well, and that the replacement project was going to happen sooner or later. But we all know what happened 2 years later. In 1975, the fiscal crisis hit, canceling most of the Program for Action projects. The IRT Third Avenue L replacement project was among the first to go, as by 1977, there were no mention of the project. The BX55 bus became the replacement for the IRT Third Avenue L in the Bronx. This bus was among the first to have free transfers to the subway at 3rd Avenue, 149th Street, Gun Hill Road, and Yankee Stadium stations. In 2013, the BX55 was fully replaced by the BX41 Select Bus Service and the BX15 Limited. Interestingly, the BX41 Select Bus Service did not operate on 3rd Avenue, as it operated on the nearby Webster Avenue, while the BX15 operated on 3rd Avenue but does not go to Gun Hill Road. The 3rd Avenue L replacement project does not have many remnants, but there are a few remnants if you know where to look. Right after 149th Street Grand Concourse, you'll see an opening in a tunnel. What does that opening have to do with this project? Well, this tunnel opening is the link between the IRT Jerome Avenue line and the IRT White Plains Road line, and is currently used by the 5 train. But it was speculated that this opening would be used to divert the 5 train onto the IRT 3rd Avenue L replacement project, as the Metro North's right-of-way is extremely close to this opening. To the west of Park Avenue in the Bronx, you'll see an open cut with 4 tracks and houses that seem to not be in line with the street grid. What does that have to do with this project? This open cut is Metro North's right-of-way, and is where the project would take place. It was speculated that the 2 outer tracks would be converted into subway use, as that is where all of the stations were located, and the 2 inner tracks would remain in Metro North's right-of-way. At Gun Hill Road, you'll see a lower level that seems ordinary, but when you look outside the window, you will see empty trackways. What does that have to do with the replacement project? This empty trackways used to be part of the 3rd Avenue L when they ran to this station, and the lower level used to be much bigger. The 3rd Avenue L service would end here, but the tracks didn't and would rise up and connect to the White Plains Road line. This is why there exists an abnormally wide space between the express and local tracks between Gun Hill Road and 219th Street. All of this relates to the replacement project because when the replacement project happened, this connection to Gun Hill Road would have been preserved for yard access to the 239th Street yard. Yes, the BX41 sees 17,000 riders, and the BX15 sees 20,000 riders in 2019. That is 37,000 riders, meaning that there is demand for service on 3rd Avenue in the Bronx, and having a rail line running on the 3rd Avenue region would be a boon to these riders, especially when a 3rd Avenue region is located in one of the last remaining transit deserts in the Bronx. The answer that most rail fans think I am going to say is to extend the 2nd Avenue subway up to 3rd Avenue because it helps right an old wrong, because the IRT 3rd Avenue L should not have been torn down. Well, sorry, don't read my mind because it doesn't work like that. Ahem. Anyway, I think that extending the 2nd Avenue subway up to the Bronx would be more expensive than it needs to be, and that the 2nd Avenue subway would be better suited to be extended to the Eastern Bronx. But that is a subject for a different video. So let's just talk about the potential 3rd Avenue subway. Yes, there are benefits to this subway, and yes, it helps to right a wrong. But the price using Phase 1's 2nd Avenue subway costs will cost upwards of $10 billion. And that is not even factoring the $6.3 billion cost of Phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway, needed to connect the 3rd Avenue subway to the rest of the system. So you might be asking, what do I propose? Or you might be writing some hate comment against me. Well, to answer that question, I propose having regional rail integration on Metro North, from Grand Central all the way up to Wakefield. This would be far cheaper than building out a whole new subway from scratch, and would achieve the same outcome, having a rail line in the central Bronx. Now, to maximize regional rail, infill stations should be built at 149th Street for a connection to the 2, 4, and 5, 167th Street, Claremont Parkway, and 183rd Street, combined with existing stations at Melrose, Tremont, Fordham, Botanical Garden, Williamsbridge, Woodlawn, and Wakefield. This would be a true local rail line. Also, this would provide a nice super express line into Midtown Manhattan, and would be a nice addition to a New York City regional rail network. Obviously, express service to New Haven would still continue on the inner 2 tracks, skipping all of the stations. The IRT 3rd Avenue L replacement project was a way to turn commuter rail into a subway line. But once the money dried up, this project was among the first to go, which is sad because much of the area has been starved of transit access. But there is an opportunity to use the remnants of the project to implement regional rail, which will be a boon to residents in the region by helping to right an old wrong and give those residents a nice super express to Midtown Manhattan. Anyway, that marks the end of this video. What are your thoughts on the IRT 3rd Avenue L replacement project? Let us know in the comments below, and have a good day.